I've been working a lot in the last 12 years in Australia because I have a really fantastic agent over there who is, he's just, you can't put him in any sort of a box. He's very languid and gentle, and he's sort of a gentle giant. He's a vintner, he makes wine for a living and books musicians. And in his perfect world, there's a place where there's a real listening audience, kind of like McCabe's, except there's also one of those spit roasts, or whatever those things they call. They put a giant half a animal on it and roll it around. I don't know. They do that there. And some nice wine that he's grown. That's his perfect picture, is that you have those three things together. Food that he's cooked, and he's English by heritage, so the food is always a bit English for my taste, but he loves it. It's true. You know, I'm a vegetarian. He always has a giant slab of something rotating. And I remember one time being at one of his events. And Australians, I find they're tough. They're tough, you know. They have kind of a reputation of being tough, and they're funny. And it was just sorry, they're down under. Yeah, exactly. It's all different down there. Anyway, there was like this insane wind. It's sort of like desert conditions, and this insane wind blowing through. And there was a tent that Andrew had set up for a little festival, weekend festival, and he had the big spit thing with the animal on it. And I found myself next to it, even as a vegetarian, because I was so cold. It was a way of getting warm. And they had these incredibly thin, impossibly thin paper plates, and then they'd get the giantest slabs of meat and stick them on it, and the whole plates were sort of dissolving. And these Australians were standing in this wind tunnel with these little tiny thin paper plates with these giant hunks of meat on them, and they were holding their meat onto their plate because otherwise this huge slab of meat would blow off, you know. And I was saying to one of them, I'm going, man, you Australians are really tough. And he just looked at me incredulously and goes, no, that's just a sales campaign. And I'm like, look at the picture, they're all here. Anyway, Andrew called me about 2 years ago and said, I was here in California, and he said, well, Heather and I are getting married. And I said, Andrew, congratulations, that's great news. He's got a fantastic artist woman who's now his wife. And he said, I'd like you to be the best man at the wedding. And I was quite surprised, because I've never been anything at a wedding except for a musician, which is, so I have sort of a skewed version of what goes on at weddings. And for me, it's all little cues and free food out the back. That's pretty much a wedding to me. And so there's a lot of parts of weddings I've missed in my lifetime. And so I just said right away, sure, I hear that's a big honor. And I kind of fancied cross-dressing. I thought about a tuxedo, and it'd be kind of fun. And there was a pause on his end, and he said, you have to make a speech. And I was like, Andrew, I'm a blabbermouth. That shouldn't be a problem. So I went over to Australia, and I started looking in thrift shops for tuxedos. And then Australian men started telling me what my real job was as best man. And I have to tell you, man, I'm shocked. I'm just shocked and horrified at you. He told me that the night before the wedding, I was supposed to have this wild party where I got my agent, one, drunk. Now, he's a vintner. He makes alcohol for a living, so he's got a pretty high alcohol tolerance. I was supposed to get him drunk, I was supposed to get him a stripper, and I was supposed to get him laid. I told this to him. He suggested I could do all three myself. I said, I don't think so. So I just thought, well, I'm not going to do that. If you have a girl best man, you don't have to do these things. And so I went along my tour, having a good time looking for a tuxedo. And the more I thought about it, I thought it's a big honor being a best man. I guess I should really step up to the plate and do what's expected. And so I decided to throw the wild party, and I found a location for it. And then I started to look for a stripper. And it's embarrassing to admit that at the time I was in my late 40s, and I'd never in my life hired a stripper. It seemed like a gaffe in my life. And so I didn't know how you went about it. I didn't know, like, if there's a, best stripper by pamphlet that you can figure out. I didn't know how to do it. And I happened to be in Melbourne, Australia, and I opened the yellow pages, because that's what I'm used to doing over here. I opened the yellow pages to strippers. And pretty much the entire yellow pages in Melbourne was strippers. And I thought, how the hell would you narrow it down? And so I'm trying to find, the right stripper for this occasion. And I was just overwhelmed by choice, and it was too much work. And I finally thought, well, hell, if I'm going to pay for this thing, I might as well enjoy it. So I got a male stripper. The Watermelon Man. Don't ask about the name. And I got this man's email address. I sent him an email inquiring what his price might be for a private party. And I got the quickest email response back I've ever received in my life. And he said, $450 for 5 minutes. I thought, dang, I'm in the wrong line of work. And I sent him another email back saying, sorry, that's a bit pricey for me. I'm just focusing or trying to play a joke on my agent. And he sent me another email right back saying, sounds like a job for the Watermelon Man, $225. And I thought, well, hell, it's kind of worth it for the joke. So I hired him, and the more I thought about it, I thought the women of the wedding, the best maids or whatever they're called on the other side, I thought they would enjoy the watermelon man every bit as much as the men, the best men, and all the other men, the less best men. I don't know how they qualify themselves like that, but I thought that maybe the women would have more fun. So I decided to invite all the women along, but just to keep in the theme of the party, I said they had to dress as men. And so there were all these women there dressed as men, and all these men there at the party, and the watermelon man came along, and I think he thought we were clearly out of our minds, but true to his word, he put on some wild disco music, and he had a watermelon, and he stripped himself naked, and he smashed the watermelon into bits and smeared watermelon all over his body, and I thought it was fantastic. And he had this cod-shaped piece of watermelon rind that he found, and he put it over his dick and spun breakdancer style on the cod piece of watermelon, and I thought it was the best $225 I've ever spent. And, I just wanted to tell you that because I want to let you know, in case you're getting married, I'm an experienced best man.